evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tex Messages, the Resurrection. I'm the parasite, Rick Tex. We're glad to have you here on this Sunday evening, January 13th, 2019. Apparently, we filmed a show this morning. That's at least what the producers tell me. I don't really recall. I mean, I recall setting up the lights, and then after that, just driving to Micro Center. But for some reason, I just don't remember the show this morning, so I'm just going to go ahead. We're just going to go ahead and film another show just to make sure that we're putting a show out there because, see, it's all about maintaining consistency. I mean, that people come to expect you to consistently be on the air at least 5-6 days a week or whatever the case may be. So, and part of that is just maintaining good habits. Apparently, if you do something 30 days in a row or 30 times in a row or say something 30 times, then it gets ingrained into your brain and it becomes habitual. So that's why if you have good contingency or good, good habits or good ideas of what to do, if you repeat them to yourself 30 times, then you'll remember them. Because a lot of times, we might come up with an idea for a show or a song or something like that, and then come showtime, we have absolutely no idea of what it was. Because, another great way to remember stuff, well, you don't really even have to remember it, just keeping it present or keeping it, to write it down. To get these little notepads, they're like 3-inch by 5-inch notepads, to walk around with them everywhere and then just write stuff down. I mean, if it's an idea for what you can do at your work, or maybe some healthy foods you can eat, or if you wanted to pick something up at a store, or just a TV show you wanted to watch, or some type of book you wanted to read, anything like that, ladies and gentlemen. Just a good idea to carry around those little 3x5 notepads to, document your life or your thoughts and hearts and minds and souls and everything like that. So, with that being said, we at the very peak of Text Messages, the original one, we're doing 4 shows a week, 1 hour for each one, which got to be a bit oversaturation. The initial goal was about 20 hours a week, because you figured, common man on K-Fan, he does 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, so 15 hours. Now, yeah, there's occasional guests, and for one of the hours, there's somebody else that joins them, so I mean, as common man, and he's got an interim producer as well that actually talks on the show. So I mean, the producers don't get involved in any of the verbal things on the show. The producers do all the instructional videos, like how to, change a furnace or a water softener, or change your fuel filter or spark plugs, or do Arduino stuff. They do all that. I mean, I don't really know how to do any of that stuff, so I just leave that to the producers. But as far as a lot of the shows that I've seen over the years, InfoWars usually 5 days a week. Occasionally they'll do a show on Sunday, and sometimes special reports too. But yeah, for each individual on that show probably does between 15 to 20 hours, maybe 10 hours a week. So that was sort of the initial goal for Text Messages, to get up to 20 hours a week, just to be on the safe side. But we had more sponsor obligations, and then they require more time, so ultimately we didn't have enough time to film the show to that degree, which is why we didn't really taper it off. We just sort of ended the show suddenly, and then 3 months later just picked up the Resurrection. And we figured, all right, a 20-minute show, 3 days a week will probably be good. But we're starting to find out that the 20-minute format, it goes by really quick. I mean, you only need a couple topics to fill a 20-minute time slot. But with the original Text Messages, the nascent idea, in its embryonic stage, we were going to have unique topics for every single show. Now, what we found out is after about a dozen shows, you start to run out of topics, because we'd have biking, running, gardening, weightlifting, swimming, diving, track, all this. That's kind of part of running. But we'd have all these different topics, and then write down a bunch of different more topics like arcade, video gaming consoles, pro wrestling. Found out that it was very difficult to cover an hour-long segment with those topics. So then we had to start delving into news articles, and I started to realize that as far as a lot of other topics, national topics like politics, science, religion, sports, I don't really know a whole lot about any of those things. But health was something that I could definitely pick up on, and because we basically essentially I run experimentation on myself all the time. So as far as health and the BS out there and the things that are legitimate, I have a very good exposure to what's right and wrong and what's left and right, and definitely have a magnifying glass to what's healthy for you ladies and gentlemen at home. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that works for me works for everybody else, because we're all unique in our own way. I mean, physiologically, yeah, we have an esophagus, small intestine, large intestine, colon, stomach, pancreas, other hormone secreting organs. A skin, eyes, nose, ears, torso, legs, knees, elbows. Pretty much everybody's got them. Most people have got. Some people are missing a few things here and there, but that's we're very similar in that regard, but different in how they function and interact with each other. And most of it is probably the software in our DNA, which is generally why people tend to follow the belief of a higher intelligence, because there's pretty much no way that any one of the human species could actually create a human with all the the DNA coding and how the body works with itself and how everything regenerates, cell regeneration and restructuring, and just to go from a single celled organism to what we are today is very difficult to fathom for a lot of people. And I mean, we have hard enough time just making robots that can pick up car parts and weld them onto a car. So to actually build a living, breathing human being that can live for 100 years would be quite the challenge. It'd be an arduous task for even the most highly intellectual computer programming software people. So that's generally why people follow the beliefs of a higher intelligence, which is certainly something I would subscribe to as well. I mean, until a human can actually make other humans, then yeah, maybe the higher intelligence thing won't be as prudent of an idea to follow. But until that happens, which is highly unlikely. And then even if it does happen too, there's probably a lot of fallacies that would go into it as well. I mean, yeah, people can create a robot that looks like a human, but it's certainly far from a human. Just about anything artificial is completely different from any plant life that begins as a seed. And believe it or not, humans begin as a seed too, or an egg cell, or whatever the case may be. So the reality is most humans probably originate as an egg cell, because sperm cells, they don't really live as long as egg cells. And based on a lot of male behavior, lots of sperm cells are probably killed every single day, whereas egg cells, they're pretty constant throughout the lifetime of a female host of an egg cell. So if you want to know your origin, it's likely your egg, the egg cell. Because there was one time where I inquired as to, did I truly begin as a sperm or an egg cell? But ultimately, it's probably an egg cell. So if anybody, the total chicken and the egg theory, it's like it started with the egg, and then the chicken came. So there's pretty much that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we're going to get into some research topics today. So what we found is that we're looking at since it's a weekend, we decided we would tackle the health effects of too high alcohol consumption. I may call it binge drinking, where you just go out and just drink way too many beers or wine coolers or vodka or Rumple Mints, Silver Wolf. Maybe you go to the grocery store and buy some orange extract and drink a lot of that stuff in your basement, or your parents' basement if you're still living with them. So there's a lot of ways to overconsume alcohol, and today we're going to tackle the 5 health effects as a result of it. Number 1, it alters gut bacteria and it impairs digestion and your immune system, contributing to a lot of nutritional diseases. Now, alcohol in and of itself kills bacteria. That can somewhat be a good thing, and it can somewhat be a bad thing. Now, it can be a good thing because it can suppress your diseases, but it can also be a bad thing because if you have weak gut bacteria in the first place, it'll act as antibiotic and kill the rest of them, and then it just wreaks havoc in the rest of your system. So, I mean, everybody seems to, that's one of the primary differences between a lot of people is their gut bacteria, the different types of food you can eat and everything like that, and how much alcohol you can consume. So number 2, chronic health conditions include heart disease, dementia, and cancer. Now, when you drink a lot of alcohol, your heart has to work very hard to get it out of your system. So you're basically putting it in overdrive, and you're not contributing to the cardiovascular health that would go along with it if you normally exercise your heart. Now, number 3, inflammation of the pancreas leading to acute and painful case of pancreatitis. And also, it's very detrimental on your liver and kidneys because those are the ones that are working with your heart in tandem with your heart to expel the toxins. And the pancreas basically secretes all your hormones and your insulin to control your blood sugar. But if you got a bunch of alcohol in your blood, your pancreas is going to work on overdrive to try to regulate that as well. So because your pancreas, it gets a lot of feedback from your blood. Normally, if it sees a lot of sugar, it'll pump a lot of insulin in. But if it sees a lot of alcohol in, it pumps just a bunch of random garbage in, apparently. So it overtaxes it, and it can lead to pancreatitis, which is very painful. All right, number 4, irregular heartbeat and weakness. Again, this kind of goes back to the chronic health conditions, including heart disease, I mentioned cancer. And number 5, your brain health. That you can black out if you drink too much. You got memory loss or disruption in growth of new cells. Another thing that can cause memory loss is working with electricity and not being safe about it and electrocuting yourself. That can absolutely contribute to memory loss and blackouts. But if you can consciously, it's probably more so just trying to control your alcohol. Because you see a lot of those studies out there that say, oh, if you drink 1 wine a day, then it clears your bloodstream and it makes you healthy and everything like that, and it relaxes you and whatnot. And for the most part, yeah, there's probably an element of truth to that. I mean, a lot of things in moderation are healthy that would normally be dangerous in high consumption. Like, for example, if you're lactose intolerant, any amount of yogurt is bad for you. Or if you're very sensitive to alcohol, any amount of alcohol is bad for you. And usually, if you're in doubt, probably just stick with no amount. But yeah, if you can party all the time and drink a few beers here and there, or a few wine coolers, and not really feel too many ramifications of it, then yeah, maybe it isn't such a bad thing. And in fact, if it leads to a healthy social life and it contributes to mental health, then it probably is a better idea to drink a few. But yeah, I mean, 2 12-packs a night is probably not the best idea, or a 1.75 liter vodka is also not the best idea. In fact, one of the places where I satisfy sponsors at the, one of the guys there happens to enjoy, he used to happen to enjoy consuming large quantities of alcohol, and unfortunately he's not really around anymore to contribute to my learning as an elder to the youth, which is a very slightly unfortunate, and even though I can't say unequivocally that it's due to overconsumption of alcohol, but it's certainly a suspected suspicion of overconsumption. So it does have when it's overused, it has very good people can turn into very strange, odd, and bad people. And it's not just while they're consuming it, it's also while they're not consuming it too. If you drink a 1.75 liter every day for 3 days and then you don't drink it one day, then you're probably going to start having erratic behavior. And in fact, one of the, it definitely messes with your brain chemistry too, your serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamines, melatonin, and all that stuff too. And yeah, it disrupts your growth of new brain cells. So it's just a very destructive activity. Prohibition was probably a good idea, but it's just one of them things where it looks good on paper, but in practice it's not such a good thing, because you get all these criminal entities that take advantage of it, and then people are so used to it and succumb to it, and government has certainly overextended its reach in a lot of facets of our living. So when it overextends it in something like prohibition, then people get angry and want to lash out against it and don't see the good or the positive effects of it. Now, that doesn't mean government is always the solution. In fact, more times than not, government, when it protects individual freedom, liberties, and the pursuit of happiness, then yeah, it's a pretty good thing. But when it starts to get out of control and too tyrannical, then it definitely deteriorates into something that is less than desirable for each individual. And even the individuals in government too, they are in a way harming themselves by getting involved with all the crazy tyrannical policies. Well, that being said, alcohol is just, if you're younger and stuff, it's fun to experiment with it and see what the buzz is all about, but certainly not a rabbit hole that too many people want to crawl down to. I mean, it destroys families, it destroys work, it just destroys individuals. And I mean, it's pretty clear what some of the effects are. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to another topic here. Food additives shown to trigger autoimmune disease. So you've probably heard of celiac disease, the gluten intolerance, or whatever the case may be. A lot of people claim to have it, but Actually, this estimates that about 18 million people have some degree of insensitivity to celiac, or to gluten, but it's just not diagnosed. See, what celiac disease is, it's wheat, rye, and barley. There's a certain protein in there that wreaks havoc on your intestines. And there's like these little villies in there that grab all your nutrients that come out of your food. And when you put all these proteins in, it kind of wipes those out. So it's a very bad thing. Not only does it coat some of the receptors, it sort of wipes them out too, so they can't even grab any more nutrients. So you're basically not getting anything out of the protein from the wheat, rye, and barley, but it's also preventing you from getting nutrients from anything else. So what they found is there's an increase of microbial transglutaminase, which has direct positive correlation with the increase of celiac disease. See, what microbial transglutaminase is it helps hold food together. It's basically like an egg yolk. You know, you mix an egg. If you're familiar with recipes and making food and being in the kitchen and all that, you use an egg yolk to hold food together, like a bread or anything like that, flour, things of that nature. You can get a gluten-free flour too. It's usually like almond flour or chickpea flour or something like that. Now, the microbial transglutaminase is unlabeled and hidden from public. So you can find it in just about anything. Meat, dairy, baked goods, bread, pastas, cereal, salad dressing, deli meat. And one of the things that you best want to avoid is it acts as a preservative, and holds the food together, of course. So you try to want to avoid long shelf items. Items that can, like if you buy a pasta and it can sit in your shelf for 4 years. If you look at the expiration date, it's 2024. Then you know it probably has some weird chemicals like the microbial transglutaminase in it. So, I mean, it's out. See, the thing with this transglutaminase is it's also produced in your gut, but it's just at a very, very smaller amount than what is used to preserve the foods. And it's a similar structure. So, I mean, it may not be identical, but it's similar. So what ends up happening is your body ends up attacking both the artificial and the self-made versions of these transglutaminases. So it's kind of a, you kind of get hit with a 1-2 punch there. But, I mean, that's usually why we try to avoid packaged foods. I mean, yeah, it's great that they can sit on the shelf for years on end, but I mean, if you're going to eat something, it's generally a good idea to try to prepare short-term. Yeah, if you want to be a prepper and everything like that, then tree nuts are probably great for that, but by and large, it's a lot of the packaged foods you definitely want to be very, very cautious about what's in it, because not a lot of the ingredients require to be labeled, because some of them apparently can, at least what the food manufacturers and providers claim, is that they just go right through your body, so they don't technically count as a nutrient, so they don't have to add them on the label or include them on the label, which is why it's sort of, I mean, it is a little disheartening, because sometimes if you look at a food label and you see, quote, spices, that could be a lot of things. Generally, if you see spices on the food label, you know that it's probably trouble and should best be avoided. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, it's just a good idea to get, raw, fresh food. Even if the organic food costs a little bit more, you're supporting people who are well-meaning. Yeah, there might be some scammers in the organic industry, and yeah, it's just a standard, as many people will tell you. But it's a step in the right direction. Non-GMO, whatever the case may be, all that good fun stuff. And the important thing is just to be healthy. Because, I mean, you might be eating foods that on the surface appear very healthy, but then they throw in a random preservative like the microbial transglutaminase, and it causes havoc on your body. Just one preservative in maybe a box of flour that you're eating or something like that, or that you make into bread and eat that. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the conclusion of the show. We're glad and we're honored to have you here joining us once again. We probably named this show January 12th, 2019, because if I did a show this morning, then you can't have the same name because YouTube won't accept it then, so we'll probably just put a different day on there. As long as the days are close enough, then it's probably not going to be a big deal. But, I mean, it's not like we got some weekly episodic series that we're just constantly, sequentially, in chronic order putting all these shows out. Because, I mean, you could watch a show from last year or watch a show from 3 months ago and there's no continuity. It's just, I mean, there is a bit of continuity here and there, because a lot of times we have on-air production meetings. It's just, to keep you, the ladies and gentlemen at home, informed as to the direction of the show. So you know that you know how to allocate your time in the future if you decide to continue listening, which we absolutely appreciate that you join us each and every weekday or 5 days a week, 6 days a week, however often we're filming. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we salute you. We thank you. We hopefully will be back tomorrow night, God willing, and goodbye.